30 years ago, the world of Sonic the Hedgehog would change forever when Archie Comix would publish the first part of their miniseries. Who would have thought that the single batch of stories would be the beginning of one of the most divisive pieces of Sonic media to exist? A series that was home to controversial storylines, writers that had been ridiculed to Kingdom Come, and art that had become the laughingstock of the fanbase. And yet, despite of all these cons against it, I absolutely adore the Archie Sonic comics. A series that was in most cases ahead of its time, boasted a humongous cast of characters ranging in variety and location, and even design, an ongoing plot with Sonic and his ragtag group of freedom fighters liberating the forces of Dr. Robotnik and his creations, all aided by some groundbreaking stories and artwork. While we've seen what these guys can push onto the printed pages, no one has ever seemed to talk about what happens behind those closed doors at Archie Comics. The stories that never made it past the writing phase, the art that was never supposed to be seen, and even the little details that you may have never noticed while reading the comics yourself. Up until now. Instead of going through another story arc or even the history of a specific writer, we're going to be doing something entirely different, exploring a side of the comics that nobody talks about, the cut content of Archie Comics' Sonic the Hedgehog. The first person on our list is Ken Penders. He does have a few ideas from his early days at Archie, but what's most interesting is his plans between issues 160 up to 200, so let's see what this roadmap would have entailed. Penders was planning to introduce a duo of villains that would have been a parody of the Mario Bros. This was scrapped due to the characters looking a bit too on the nose. However, Fleetway's Sonic the Comic would actually run with a Mario Bros inspired villain of their own, the Marxio Bros, who are the ones who are in charge of the casino and carnival night zones in that series universe. There were plans to do a Sonic Live-esque super special before Sonic Live, that would have had Sonic meet the Seattle Supersonics called Slam Jammin' Sonic. After an experimental invention from Rotor goes wrong, Sonic makes it into the real world and helps the Supersonics beat the Boston Celtics. I can't believe we as a society were truly robbed of a story about Sonic ballin'. Maybe if Penders published that story, the fan base could have given him a chance. Knuckles would have gotten his own spin on the world of Mobius 25 years later, creatively titled Knuckles 25 Years Later, which was originally planned to appear in Sonic Super Special Issue 9, which aligns with the info provided in the Spaz sketchbook from issue 115. This also gives us a glimpse into the future designs of the Echidna-centric cast. Laura Sue was going to be the main character, and the series would have followed off of the timeline established in the Sonic In Your Face special. Alright, now that we've gotten through that, let's jump into the post-160 plans from Penders. Similar to Ian Flynn, Penders' plan was to bring Sonic and Sally back together during his run. He would have had Sonic and Sally go through multiple tribulations to aid in Sonic trying to figure out what made Sally the girl for him. A story that would have been a part of the relationship building would include Sonic's first job as a gentleman at arms, where he would accompany Sally to Station Square to set up an embassy. In addition to that, issues 175 and 200 would have seen Antoine propose to Bunny and get married in those two issues respectively. Ultimately, Ian Flynn had the same goal in mind with his run, and had Antoine propose and marry Bunny in issues 173 and 174. Issue 160 would focus on the relationship dynamic between Sonic and Uncle Chuck. Chuck would also go on a date with Rosie, with Sonic acting like a guardian angel figure during the whole event. That's kinda cute actually. Easily the most infamous cut story from Ken Penders would be the story in which Sally and Joffrey would have some sort of sexual encounter. Ultimately, it was a story that he acknowledged he couldn't put into the comic. Ken Penders would go on to defend the age difference, but would state that there are laws that allow 13-year-olds to marry 40-year-olds in the US, which even he admits is quite disgusting. Karl Bollers had a couple plans post-134 that would span as far as issue 150. Amy and Fiona would have a rivalry over Sonic's affections, with Amy winning. She and Sonic would have a relationship after being stranded at sea, which would lead into a Sonic CD adaptation that would explore Amy's past. Shadow and Snively, who would pilot a large robot under the alias Scarkus, would team up against Robotnik after the villain kidnaps Hope Kintabor and uses her as bait for Shadow, as Robotnik believes that he is her legal guardian. Nate Morgan would be de-roboticized after Robotropolis got nuked, and his knowledge would be used against the heroes in rebuilding the OG Metal Sonic, and creating Tails Doll, Metal Knuckles, and even Metal Amy. The trio would attack New Megaopolis and Knothole City. This would all culminate with Metal Sonic transforming into the Metal Overlord from Sonic Heroes. The Metal Trio would eventually make their debut near the end of the pre-Super Genesis wave under the pen of Ian Flynn during the Mecha Sally and Endangered Species story arcs. On the more mystical side, we have the Source of All, which would have played a large part in the character development of Antoine, who had changed in demeanor and attitude as mentioned in issue 134. Antoine would bend to the Source's will to marry Sally. Bunny's breakup with him would also lead up to Bunny's origins, and the reveal of her actual name, Scarlett O'Hare. Possibly the coolest story out of the bunch would star Knuckles going on a globe-trotting adventure, where he'd learn martial arts and battle Monkey Khan, who would have been under the control of the Iron Queen. This story would have also introduced the Master Geode, a gem that could restore someone's life. We're starting off with something rather strange with Flynn's scrapped stories. When Jazzwares got the license to make comic book packs in 2009, Flynn was instructed to make the infamous clear blue Sonic action figure into an actual character. It would have either been a clone made by Dr. Robotnik or a separate entity from Chaos. There were attempts to introduce elements of the games earlier in the series, such as the Black Arms and E123 Omega, into the comic, but the ideas weren't approved, especially with Omega, who was originally pitched to be the one to kill Tommy Turtle or be a part of issue 175's destruction of Knothole story arc. There also was a single mention of a scrapped Sonic 06 tie-in, but no known info has surfaced. Did you know that the Kung Fu Panda series of all pieces of media was going to influence the Archie Sonic comics? Yeah, I'm not even joking with this one. The Dragon Kingdom Freedom Fighters would have been shown as a homage to the Furious Five, but since that was scrapped, we still don't know who they actually are to this day. Bunny Rabbit would have been legionized during some point in Sonic Universe. The only art we have of this new design is this concept sketch by Tracy Yardley. Additionally, there was also the concept art of a Metal Shadow by Yardley too. He was planned to appear in the Sonic Comic Encyclopedia, but wouldn't make it to the final cut. There were some concepts that never made it during the post-reboot. The big overarching narrative would focus on the Freedom Fighters disbanding, leading into multiple stories focusing on each character. Antoine would fight against a swordsman named Cortez, which would actually be restored and fully realized in the fan continuation, Archie Sonic Online. Sonic would meet up with Honey the Cat during the production of a TV show called Sonic Man Heroes. And finally, the most famous of the scrap stories is none other than the Metal Virus saga, that would have happened after the 300th issue. Not too much is known about it other than it was only shelved to avoid competition with Afterlife with Archie, and Bunny Rabbit would play a large part in the event since she is part robot. This story would be used in the IDW Sonic the Hedgehog comics, so I'm glad that it got a chance to shine under a new coat of paint. Alright, let's talk about some of the interesting details and some facts that you may have never noticed or heard about. Cover artist Patrick Spaziante is well known for replicating quite a lot of Sonic art styles, such as Watanabe's airbrush art style and Yuji Uekawa's Sonic Adventure art style, and much more. But did you know about the time he replicated the 3D models from Sonic the Fighters and even the official renders all in 2D? One of the scrapped variants for Archie Sonic issue 293 featured this beauty, and this one in Best of Sonic the Hedgehog Volume 1. Another interesting tidbit with Spaziante is that despite the fact he did a majority of the covers in Uekawa style between issues 137 to 150, a lot of the early drafts of these covers were actually done in his style. Even within issues such as 148 that was done in Hisunabu Kotamani's style, has an early cover that resembles Spaz's OG style. It even features Isaac, who's incorrectly colored to E102's color scheme. Spaziante also would sneak in the character Astel in various covers of the series, and even in his Spaz sketchbook. Tracy Yardley's signature has an exclamation at the end of it. The reason behind this is in reference to the first Archie Sonic artist, Scott Shaw, who also did this too. In one of Yardley's variant covers, issue 225, he actually spoils the ending of the story front and center. Sally dies at the end of the issue, and you can see her hand within this one. Various artists would sneak game consoles in the comics. Every era of the comics run would have everyone gaming. Okay, but what they all playing though? Did you know that issue 50 is home to one of the most redrawn panels within the comics history? You have the Watanabe-style rendition by Spaziante for Sonic Archives Volume 13, redrawn in issue 141's Flashback by Stephen Butler, and technically not a redraw, but still a retelling of the event in Ron Lim's art from issue 108. Just wanted to throw that one out there for fun. Did you know that Jeff Axter's redesign for Joffrey from issue 130 was apparently too complex for artists later down the line? Eventually, his design would return back to its original attire in issue 220 because of this. In issue 152, artist John Gray originally gave Tommy Turtle a cute little hat, but it got removed in the final print. Also, shoutouts to him randomly drawing the US flag in the background here for no reason. Finally, one of the book's artists, Ben Bates, has a weird mindset of not making Sonic cry or show excessive emotion. Now, there have been a few times in the series run where his stuff did have to get toned down before the final print, but Ben outright stated that he never wanted to draw Sonic sad ever again, with issue 232 being the breaking point for him. And those are some of the interesting art facts that I found. But we're not done yet. Let's talk about the world of fan continuations. Archie Sonic Online is a webcomic series dedicated to continue the series' pre-reboot run, and even follows up on some of the unused concepts from Ian Flynn. This includes the story of Mecha Sally becoming de-roboticized in issue 250, and the Freedom Fighter stopping this Joffrey Naugus amalgamation. Issue 250 also has a variant cover done by former Archie Sonic artist Don Best. The other notable fan continuation that has a bit of work done by an Archie member is Sonic Eggs, a spoof continuation of Archie Comics' Sonic X spin-off. Tracy Yardley actually helped out with a couple of pencils within this one. We have such groundbreaking stories such as Sonic and Tails stopping Eggman's El Gordo dolls from stealing everyone's Christmas presents on Christmas, thanks to Tails reprogramming the dolls on his iPhone. Another one with some more pencils from Yardley feature a clone of Shadow who befriends the heroes and even plays dress up with Cream the Rabbit. And on the more infamous side, we have the Laura Sue Chronicles. This is an unofficial continuation of the Mobius 25 Years storyline from issues 131 to 144. This comic by former writer and artist Ken Penders has been in development for over a decade, with only a few preview pages surfacing around. I can't really say too much since it isn't out yet, but from what I've seen, it's definitely something. We're gonna end off our little bonus section by looking at some stories that were done by either obscure members of Archie Comics or the artists that actually have a decent history of writing some notable stories. I've mentioned Patrick Spaziante, who only made a 2-page story of Sonic and Tails going to a mirror zone. Evan Stanley wrote Archie Sonic Universe issues 79 and 82, the Silver Age story arc. In this story, Silver teams up with Professor Von Schlemmer from Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog and newcomer Golda Tenric to stop the Genesis portals, which are caused by a group known as the Council. Nelson Ribeiro made a short backup story in issue 148, with the humor coming from the casting, Tails being played by Rotor, Robotnik being played by Big, and Sally being played by Knuckles. When Spider-Man writers are brought up into the conversation of Archie Sonic, Dan Slott is the guy most Archie fans point to. He was responsible for a lot of the Sonic the Zone Cop stories. However, another individual, Danny Fingroth, is another writer from Marvel Comics who wrote a 2-part story called Heart of the Hedgehog. After the Freedom Fighter ship crash lands in the middle of nowhere, Sonic and Tails are off to find supplies, but come face to face with the newly rebuilt original Metal Sonic, who's kidnapped Tails and has challenged the Blue Blur to race over to save him. It's a pretty heartfelt story, and I highly recommend this one. It's hella underrated and births the design that would become Shard the Metal Sonic. Even if they aren't big names in the writing department, the obscure collection of writers and artists turned writers could churn out a banger or two every once in a while. There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Some interesting bit of trivia in the world of cut content of Archie Sonic. We even got to see what the fans did to flesh out the what-ifs of those lost stories too. And while I didn't dive deep into the side of obscure writers, that shouldn't deter you from checking out their stories, even if they were just one-time inclusions. Archie Sonic is definitely something else when it comes to Sonic media, but it's still got a lot of insanely cool stuff to offer, even if it didn't make it to the final cut. Thanks for watching, everyone. If you like what you saw, you practically already know what to do at this point. I also have a Discord server, which has gone through some major changes such as monthly events, polls for new videos, and more recently, the option to view uploads like this one way before it hits YouTube. I also live stream, so peep the streams when they're up. I'm slowly becoming much more consistent with streaming, and I've been doing some streams with my brand new VR chat group, so check that out too. Anyways, hope to see you all in the next Stryster video.